Marcus had been trading for 18 months when he finally said something out loud that most traders never admit to themselves. He was sitting in his car in a parking lot at 11 in the morning. Account down $40. Prop firm challenge on day 9. 2 more losses and the challenge was over. And he said, "It's not the strategy. It's me." Not in a defeated way. Not in a self-pity way. In the way someone speaks when they've finally stopped lying to themselves and the relief of the truth is almost physical. Marcus wasn't losing because his setup was broken. He'd back-tested it. The edge was real. He wasn't losing because the market was rigged against him. He wasn't unlucky. He was failing tests. The same test. Over and over. Tests that had nothing to do with candlestick patterns or risk ratios and everything to do with who he was under pressure. Here's what nobody tells you when you start trading. The market is not just a financial system. It's a psychological examination that runs continuously, every session, every trade, every moment between trades. And it doesn't grade you on your analysis. It grades you on your behavior when your analysis gets it wrong. There are 7 tests. Every trader faces all of them. Most traders fail most of them most of the time without ever realizing they're being tested at all. And that's exactly why they keep starting over. By the end of this video you'll know all 7. More importantly, you'll recognize them in real time. Because the moment you can name the test you're standing in, everything changes. Let's begin. Test 1, the loss test. Marcus's first test came at 9:47 in the morning on a Tuesday. Clean setup. Proper entry. Stop placed correctly. Price moved against him immediately, hit his stop and was out. $40 loss. Within his risk parameters. Exactly what the plan said could happen. And then the pull started. You know this feeling. It arrives in the seconds after a stop hits. It doesn't announce itself as desperation. It announces itself as opportunity. The market is still moving. There's another setup forming right now. You could be back in profit in 10 minutes if you just act. That voice feels like intuition. Feels like pattern recognition. Feels like experience talking. It isn't any of those things. It is a wounded ego looking for the fastest exit from the pain of being wrong. And it will dress itself up in whatever costume makes you most likely to listen to it. Marcus listened. He took the next trade. Not because it met his criteria. Because he needed to erase what just happened emotionally. That trade lost too. Now he was down 2 stops before 10 a.m., emotionally wrecked, discipline already broken. Here's what Marcus eventually learned about the loss test. It is not asking whether you can avoid losses. You cannot avoid losses. No edge in the history of trading has a 100% win rate. The loss test is asking one specific question. What do you do in the 60 seconds after the stop hits? Winners feel the pull and do nothing. They mark the trade, check whether they followed the plan and wait. Losers feel the pull and act on it. And every time they act on it they teach their brain that losses require immediate response. Which means the next loss will feel even more urgent to fix. Marcus passed this test the day he built a single rule around it. After any loss, platform closed for 15 minutes. No exceptions. Not because 15 minutes heals anything. Because 15 minutes is long enough for the ego's noise to quiet down enough for him to hear his actual trading brain again. The loss test never stops coming. But once you know what it's really asking, the answer becomes simpler. Do nothing. Wait. Let it pass. Test 2, the win test. This is the test nobody prepares for because nobody thinks winning needs preparation. Marcus had 2 clean winners before lunch on a Wednesday. Up $80. He felt sharp. Dialed in. Like something had clicked that morning in a way it hadn't before. That feeling was the test. Here's what was actually true. Nothing had changed. The market was the same. His strategy was the same. He had executed well twice, which was genuinely good, but it told him nothing about the next trade. 2 data points in a probability game that runs across thousands of trades is not signal. It's noise. But his brain didn't register it as noise. It registered it as evidence. Evidence that today was different. Evidence that he was in sync with the market. Evidence that he could trust his gut a little more than usual this afternoon. And so the criteria started drifting. Not obviously. Not in a way he would have noticed if you'd asked him. But the next setup he took was 80% there. The one after that was 70%. By end of day he had given back the morning and lost another $60 on top of it. The win test asks one thing. Can you feel genuinely good and still do nothing when there is nothing to do? It is asking whether success changes how you operate. Whether confidence earned from 2 good trades bleeds into trades 3, 4, and 5 as something that corrupts rather than confirms. The traders who pass this test treat a winning morning the same way they treat any other morning. Not with less satisfaction, not with false humility, but with the exact same criteria, the exact same patience, the exact same willingness to sit and wait. Marcus learned to use wins as a signal to tighten up rather than loosen. Every time he felt that post-win sharpness, he would slow down deliberately. Check his next setup against the criteria twice instead of once. Because he knew by then that the version of him that felt unstoppable was also the version most likely to do something stupid. Test 3: The Waiting Test. Marcus sat at his desk for 2 hours and 40 minutes on a Thursday morning without taking a single trade. The market was open. Price was moving. There were things happening on the chart. And none of it was his setup. Not even close. The session was giving him nothing real to work with. By hour 2, the silence had become a physical thing. It pressed against him. Being here, watching this, doing nothing, it felt like failure in a way that was surprisingly specific. Like he was at work and producing nothing. Like everyone else was finding something and he was the only one sitting still. So he looked harder. Zoomed into the 15-minute chart. Found a setup that was close enough if you were generous with the criteria. Took it. Lost $40 to relieve discomfort he hadn't even consciously acknowledged he was feeling. The waiting test is the quietest of the 7 and possibly the most expensive because it doesn't feel like a test at all. It feels like circumstance. It feels like the market giving you nothing. But what's actually happening is the market holding up a mirror and asking, can you tolerate the discomfort of appropriate inaction? Most traders can't. Not because they're undisciplined in general. Because the human nervous system is not designed for deliberate stillness in high-stimulus environments. Sitting at a live chart with price moving and doing nothing registers at a primal level as wrong. As falling behind. As wasting time. But Marcus's best sessions were always the ones where he took one clean trade and then had nothing else to do. Not because he forced himself to stop. Because there was genuinely nothing else there. He learned to separate being present from needing to trade. He learned that watching a market for 3 hours and taking 0 trades could be a perfect session. That realization didn't come easily. It came after tracking exactly how much the boredom trades cost him over 3 months. The number was uncomfortable enough that he stopped taking them almost immediately. Sometimes the most expensive thing you can buy is something to do. Test 4: The Fear Test. 3 consecutive losses in 3 consecutive sessions. All 3 setups were legitimate. All 3 executions were clean. All 3 stops were within his parameters. The strategy hadn't failed. Variance had simply landed on the wrong side 3 times in a row, which is something every edge in existence will do periodically. But Marcus's body didn't know that. His nervous system was keeping score in a different way than his trading journal. By the 4th session, when his setup appeared, clean, crisp, every criterion met, the exact pattern he'd been waiting for, he didn't take it. He hesitated. Watched it develop. Watched it hit the target he would have set. Watched himself miss a trade that would have covered all 3 losses and put him back in profit. He had been right about the setup. He had just been too afraid to act on it. The fear test is asking a specific question. Are you carrying your history into your present decision? Because the 4th setup doesn't know about the 3 losses. The market has no memory of your personal results. The probability of that setup working is exactly what it always was, unaffected by anything that happened to Marcus personally in the sessions before it. But fear doesn't operate on probability. Fear operates on pattern. And the pattern Marcus's brain had identified was, trading leads to losing. So the self-protective response was to not trade. Which is the one response that guaranteed he wouldn't recover. Marcus built one rule to pass this test. Before every qualifying setup he asked himself a single question. Does this meet my criteria? Yes or no? Not does it feel safe right now. Not am I confident enough given recent results. Just, does it meet the criteria I defined when my head was clear? If yes, he took it. The recent history was not part of the question. Fear is always about the past or the future. The setup is always in the present. Train yourself to live in the same moment as the trade and fear loses most of its power over your execution. Test 5: The Greed Test. Marcus's trade was working. It had moved cleanly in his direction, past his 1R mark, approaching his 2R target. Then something happened that he hadn't accounted for in his plan. It kept going. Past his target. Kept moving. The momentum was strong and clean and it genuinely looked like it had more in it. And a voice appeared. Not loud. Quiet. Reasonable sounding. Analytical even. Why close now when it's clearly going further? Marcus moved his target. Just a little. Momentum was strong. Made sense to let it breathe. Then the trade reversed. Sharply. Came back through his original target, hit his stop and closed as a full loss. What should have been a 2-hour winner became a full stop loss. Not because the strategy failed. Because greed rewrote the plan in the middle of the trade while wearing the costume of smart trade management. The greed test is the cruelest of the 7 because it arrives at the moment of success. You are winning. Things are going well. And it asks in the most rational-sounding voice it can find, why not more? That voice is not strategy. It is not analysis. It is not intuition refined by experience. It is greed. And greed in a live trade is one of the most expensive things a trader can entertain. Marcus's eventual rule was simple and non-negotiable. The moment he felt the urge to extend a target mid-trade, he closed the position immediately at market. Not because the urge was always wrong, but because any decision made from that emotional state was unreliable by definition. The version of him that made the plan when his mind was calm had already done the analysis. That version had already decided where to exit. The version of him in the middle of a winning trade watching momentum run had a conflict of interest. Trust the calm version. Every time. Test 6, the drawdown test. This one doesn't unfold in seconds or minutes. It unfolds over days. Marcus had a losing week. Nothing dramatic. Just a string of valid stops that added up to a painful total by Thursday afternoon. Every trade had followed the rules. The losses were legitimate. But they were real and they had accumulated, and by Friday morning he was carrying the psychological weight of an entire week that hadn't worked. And Friday morning brought with it a feeling he recognized immediately and hated. The need to fix it before the week ended. To not close out Friday still in the red. To make the week whole. He sized up. Just this once. To recover faster. The trade lost. Now he was down more than he'd been at any point during the week, and he'd broken the one rule that existed specifically to prevent exactly this outcome. The drawdown test is the most revealing of the 7 because it doesn't just test your discipline on a single trade. It tests your discipline when discipline has been failing for days and the emotional debt has been building and the rational case for doing something different has never felt more compelling. Winners treat drawdown as a statistical inevitability that their system is designed to handle. They don't speed up to exit it faster. They don't size up to recover the losses in a single trade. They continue at exactly the same pace, same size, same criteria, not because they feel nothing, but because they've seen enough drawdowns end to know that the only thing that extends them is changing the behavior that was working before they started. Marcus passed this test the day he stopped experiencing drawdown as a problem to be solved and started experiencing it as a condition to be managed. The difference sounds subtle. In practice it changes everything about how you sit with losing weeks. Test 7, the identity test. This is the last test and the one that contains all the others. One night Marcus was going through his trading journal. Not the numbers. The notes he kept about his state of mind during trades. And he noticed something he hadn't seen before because he hadn't been looking for it. Every time he had failed one of the previous 6 tests, there was a common thread underneath the behavior. He had been trying to prove something. After losses he needed to prove he wasn't a bad trader. After wins he needed to prove he was even better than he thought. During drawdown he needed to prove the week wasn't a failure. During the waiting test he needed to prove he was engaged and working hard enough. Every deviation from his plan had an emotion behind it. And every emotion was connected to what the trading result meant about who he was as a person. This is the identity test. And it's the reason the other 6 tests are hard. If your trading results are telling you who you are, you will always be vulnerable to every test on this list. Because there will always be something to prove. A loss will always feel like a verdict. A winning streak will always feel like validation you need to protect. Drawdown will always feel like evidence of something you don't want to be true about yourself. The traders who pass this test have made a specific separation. They have decided, not just intellectually but at the level where decisions actually get made, that the account number is not them. A loss is not a verdict on their intelligence or their worth. A win is not confirmation of their value as a human being. The account moves. They remain the same. Marcus reached this the slow way. Through journal entries he didn't want to write and patterns he didn't want to see and honest conversations with himself that were genuinely uncomfortable. But he got there. And the version of him that trades now barely recognizes the version that used to revenge trade before the morning coffee got cold. These 7 tests never stop coming. They are not a curriculum you complete and graduate from. There is no session after which the market stops asking who you are under pressure. Every trading day brings a loss to react to, a win to manage, silence to sit through, fear to act through, greed to resist, drawdown to endure, and a choice about whether your results get to define you. What changes over time is not the test. It's your relationship with them. The speed at which you recognize them. The gap between the feeling that pulls you toward the wrong decision and the practiced response that takes you toward the right one. Marcus got there slowly. Imperfectly. With setbacks and resets and weeks where he failed 5 of the 7 in a single session. But he got there because he kept showing up and kept being honest about which tests he was failing and why. That path is available to every trader. So here's what I want you to do. Think about the last time you deviated from your plan. Not what the trade was. What the feeling was right before you made the decision. Which of these 7 tests were you standing in? Drop it in the comments. Not for me. For yourself. Because naming it is the first step to passing it next time. And if someone you know is in the middle of one of these tests right now, send this to them. Because sometimes the most valuable thing you can give another trader is the language to describe what they're going through. I'll see you in the next one.